Okay, so I'm in the garden now. I'm in the main big garden. Um, the other spot we just were was a garden as well, and this is a great spot because if you're a gardener and you're already interested in eating off your land, you put in all this work in the early part of the season, and then you weed out a lot of edible plants to get your garden vegetables in, and then you have to wait. But many of these weeds that are typical in gardens, they'll have different kinds of medicinal uses or can be used as vegetables while you're doing your planting. So I'm just going to run around here and grab a few of the weeds to show you, and I guess I'll reposition the camera a little bit and dig some thistle. So I apologize if the quality is a little off, but I think I have this set up so I can show you some things from the garden, and then I'll bring them up here and we can look at them more closely. So over here, we have some chickweed, which is delicious and easy to eat. Um, I guess I'll bring it right up. It occurred to me that the microphone might not work so good out there. So here we have chickweed. Well, this is giant chickweed, which is not that big, but everything's relative. And the stem does get tough. Uh, these have opposite leaves, which means that the leaves are coming off opposite each other. Important identification trait. In general, we look a lot to the leaf arrangement, which is basically either opposite, alternate, or whorled. So here you have your opposite leaves on these leggy, reclining stems. And what you want to do is either cut or just pluck the tips of the plant, especially as it gets bigger. This lower part's going to get tougher, so that's the part you want, and it's quite good. This is kind of the main lettuce substitute that we have in the area, because when people say wild lettuce, it's a lettuce relative, but it's bitter and it's used as a cooked vegetable, while this is something that we can eat raw, and even though the leaves are small, you can harvest it quite easily. By the way, I could be a little more specific about that. I'm just going to take my knife, and it's early in the spring, it's just getting started, but in a little while, this will be even easier to do, where you just grab a clump of it and cut it off. So, I think you can see me over here. Just gonna grab that clump. So, of course, if I had my basket, I would be able to throw it in and just quickly get a handful and then bring it in to wash. So let's see what else we have here. Some yellow dock. I'm going to cut this too, it's a little slimy. We got some violets here again. Luckily, a lot of the garden weeds are also edible raw, but that's a lot of wild vegetables need to be cooked. I try to mention that when I talk about it, but don't assume that just because something's edible you can munch on it raw, because that's not always the case. So here's that violet leaf. See those curled up leaf bases, but overall has a heart shape. And then what I had done with the yellow dock was cut, and this leaf is already basically too old to eat. I mean, yellow dock is not the greatest edible, really, but and it is Polygonaceae, or the related to knotweed. It has these sheaths like knotweed does. See, it's kind of slimy. So this is the part you could eat. It's bitter. Um, Actually, you know what? The cold lately is keeping this quite mild. But one thing, this isn't the most attractive because it turns brown easily when you cook. So this would be, and because of the oxalic acid that's common in this group of plants, you might not want to eat a lot of this raw. So you want to find ways to cook it quickly. Of course, longer cooking destroys more oxalic acid, but on the other hand, this is just going to turn to mush. So you kind of find a happy in between, which is the same case with treating knotweed as a vegetable and many other things. So let me take another look over here before we move the camera. Oh. So here we have dandelion, or tanpopo is the Japanese name, which we've been, my 1.5-year-old son is excited to see them now. He's learning the word for the first time, although we tried before, he's just too young. But anyway, so this is the dandelion flower head, meaning it's a composite flower, many little flowers inside there. And the thing about the flower head is this part is a little thick and bitter, so it's perfectly edible. But one technique, if you want to use this for a salad, is take this. You see, this is like the part that's closed up. So at the base there, you have the receptacle, the pad that everything's attached to. So you just want to cut that part out, and that gets this thicker piece out. And then what you have is something that's a little bit more appropriate for a salad. It's colorful, so that's nice, and you can kind of sprinkle it on, and you have a little color and flavor and something interesting in the salad. My grandfather, he used to live in the house right over here, and I can recall him going into the yard with 2 pieces of bread. And I think maybe he put mayo and mustard on there, and then he went out to the yard and would pile up a big, thick layer of dandelion leaves, and then he'd have his put the other piece of bread on, and have a dandelion leaf sandwich. So that's another good leafy green that can be eaten raw, or also can be cooked up. And of course, if you're interested in eating dandelions, it is nice to start in the early part of the season, when the cold weather and their young growth is making them more mild flavor, where as the summer comes on and the heat comes on, they'll get more and more bitter. But it's also interesting that if you start early in the season, as they get more bitter, you also have more of an appreciation for the bitter flavor, which is important and underused. The bitter flavor helps the liver and gallbladder and digestion in general. It helps to process fats, and it helps with sluggish bile, and that's one of the reasons it's good for digestion in general, and as a mild form of a laxative. Just to encourage the normal bowel movement. In the old days, especially, people would use the term blood cleanser. So a lot of these herbs, in fact, most of what I showed you would be considered blood cleansing, but some, like in particular the dandelion and yellow dock and burdock, they're really focused on as herbs that detox the blood. So there's all kinds of implications there. Or maybe in the case of a seasonal cleanse, that's what you're thinking about, is taking these bitter herbs that help to get the stagnation out from the winter, because in the winter there's less fresh vegetables and more heavy macronutrient dense foods that are high in carbohydrates, fat, and protein. So then we need these vegetables to clean the fat out of the system, and some of the effects from the sugar load. So anyway, I'm gonna show you some more things around the garden here.